Greetings everyone, Jim Walker here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back if you are a returning viewer. This is a follow-up to a couple of videos I've posted recently. Actually a couple of my pretentiously called Friday Favorites series. One dealing with favorite grooves involving cowbells on the drum set, and another dealing with my choice of cymbals for steel band gigs. And in the course of those, the focus was elsewhere. The steel band cymbals video was, as per the title, focused on steel band cymbals, as you would expect. And the other, on Cowbell Grooves, it was all about the grooves, but I didn't go into a lot of detail about the components, the raw materials. I had a couple of little captions as blurbs talking about the style, but I've had one or two people ask me about what I played, what those grooves were, if I could demonstrate some of them. So that's the purpose of our gathering today. That's the purpose of the video you're seeing right now. So a quick background, just a little bit of background in terms of my involvement and exposure with steel pan music. I'm not one of those Americans who's ever gotten to play with the steel bands in Trinidad. This just never worked out for me. Timing wasn't good when I was in college, and now with a wife and cats and a house and a mortgage and a car with 230,506 miles on it, plus the fact that it's now May of 2021 with all the fun things going on in the world in terms of traveling and going other places. Who knows? Maybe at some point in my lifetime it'll be happen. I'll be blessed if it does, but it hasn't happened yet. The exposure I did get was probably the next best thing. I got to play for a total of 4 years in the steel band program at Northern Illinois University, and at the time directed by titans of the field, as far as I'm concerned, Cliff Alexis and Al O'Connor, who both have since departed this place, rest their souls. For those of you who don't know Cliff and Al, check them out. Cliff recently inducted into the PAS Hall of Fame. You'll find obituaries and tributes, that is, at the time of his passing, all in Trinidad and all over the world, in newspapers and magazine articles. And Al, right there with him in terms of his level of ability as a percussionist. Maybe I'll make another video about those two guys and what a profound influence and what a privilege it was for me to study with them, and how, and honor, and how much I learned from those two, both on and off the bandstand. But I want to keep this from becoming a 40-minute video, so I will focus on the task at hand. But my second stint at NIU, I did two-year degrees there, and my second stint I got to play quadraphonics pan in the band. It's sort of a mid-range instrument. Those of you who are familiar with steel pan music will know it's basically the same range as the cello pan. And the best thing about that, in addition to just being able to play in a 30-piece steel band, which I never get to do anymore, I miss that dearly. But where I was set up in the rehearsal room, I was about 10 feet away from Cliff, who, in addition to being the arranger and composer and tuner and the foundation of the band as it was, he played iron in the percussion section, in the engine room as it's called, and just rock solid sense of time. So I got 4 hours a week plus concerts and other rehearsals of that just hitting me from 10 feet away, playing the iron rhythm, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I got a very nice compliment from someone for one of these recent videos. If you're out there, Keith, hello, complimenting my feel, my groove on some of these styles. And whatever level of groove I have on these, a lot of that has to go to the fact that I got to hear Cliff setting down that groove. Whatever that informed my playing, that's got to be a big chunk of it. But to the task at hand, to the beats we're playing. There was one in the steel band cymbals video and 3 in the cowbell video, and they're all based on soca grooves. And a basic soca groove, S-O-C-A, as I understand it, the term derives from soul calypso. That is a description of the roots of the music, the influences that came together to form it. I don't want to turn this into an academic exercise any more than it already is. But a really common soca beat, you hear a steel band play, just the way in jazz, kind of a foundational beat, although the jazz drummers do a lot more than that. Parallel with Soca Groove. The basic sort of foundational thing might be something like this. And I'll play that a good chunk of the time. If I get called to play with a steel band, that's going to get played a lot. But it's nice to have some variations. So the beats that I came up with had that as its starting point, and then embellishments and additions and changes going on from there. So there are a couple of rhythms in the percussion section in the engine room that I really drew a lot on. Let me get the snares off here. One is a rhythm you heard in the congas a lot, usually played with mallets rather than hands. But it'll be one of these two variations, which I believe is called the tambour rhythm. Don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding. 1, 2. Or a variation. And there are other variations, I'm sure, but those are the two I'm most familiar with, and those are the two that got used as I came up with these variant beats that I'm going to be demonstrating today. The other is the iron, a piece of metal, usually a brake drum. It's really the core. It's like clave is the key to Afro-Cuban music. It's not an exact parallel. Someone's going to get mad at me for misstating it here, but it has that same degree of importance in a steel band. It's really the focal point of the groove. That's why Cliff was playing it in the band. He didn't want to leave that to anyone else. It's really, he could control the tempo and the groove of the band by playing that. It was that dominant. And I don't have a brake drum. I haven't been able to get around to a scrapyard or any place like that to find a nice resonant brake drum, which I should do. I could use it for my orchestra gigs too. But just to demonstrate on that on the cowbell, if you go on YouTube and you look up Trinidad Panorama, you will find dozens, if not hundreds of videos. You'll hear the sound of it. It's unmistakable. You can't miss it. But variations along the line of 1, 2. And it just, hearing Cliff lock that in, again, just a huge influence on me. But that's one of the other elements that I started using as a starting point. And I just had, I was thinking about this the other day. The variations I'm going to present today all came together in like a 1 week period. I was just messing around with this stuff, and it's almost as if the drum gods reached down, touched my shoulder, and showed me a couple of cool variations. Because it was a very productive week, and I've kind of been writing that since then. But all of these are, every time you do one of these variations, what you end up with is the raw material for the next step. There's always a next step, another possibility. So you keep exploring, keep digging, and I'll demonstrate a couple of those as we go through. But let me start with, you can start with either the conga rhythm or the iron rhythm. Let's start with the iron rhythm. And again, starting with that basic soca groove. Actually, let me change up. I'm going to start with the groove that I played in the steel band Cymbals video, which is more of just a straight drum set variation. We'll come back to the percussion in a second. So think about what's going on in that basic beat I'm playing. Specifically the hi-hat part. If we're thinking 16ths and 8ths, 1 E and, 2 E and, you have 2 short notes and a long note. A really common variation is to put that up on the ride cymbal. And it's not an exact parallel, but the same way you might play. Take the. And instead of putting that on a bell, put it on the bell of the ride cymbal. Same idea. You have to be a little bit loose in terms of your interpretation of it. It's not going to sound exactly the same. But then again, that's kind of the point. If it sounded exactly the same, why would you do it? So we take, and switch that to. And as I sat there and I thought, well, what else can I do with this? I thought, what about putting those first two notes, put them back on the hi-hat? And I like the sound of that, but as soon as I tried to add the snare drum back in, it became too much for me, technically. That part right there, A, 2, E, and. Those 4 16 counts in a row, my left hand can't do that. So I like the sound of that groove, but how can I make that happen? And then I thought back to our man Steve Gadd, the 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover groove, which I'm not going to play. The world does not need another guy hacking his way through 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. But you know that groove, one of the key components of it is this sequence between the hi-hat and snare drum, where you play first hi-hat note by closing, second with the stick. I thought that's brilliant. So instead of and that bought me just enough time to get my snare drum notes in there. And that's the beat I came up with. Now, as I was watching the video, again, my friend Keith, hi Keith, pointed out, he asked, are you playing the downbeats on the ride cymbal? And I went back and said, I guess I am. I didn't realize I was. I wasn't planning it that way. It just one of those things kind of fell into place, which I'm not a fan of. You're letting your hands do your thinking for you. But hi, Keith. He was very complimentary, and he said that kind of glued things together in his initial exposure to this beat. So it's not hurting anything. So at the very least, couldn't hurt. Chicken soup. I'm just gonna leave it in there. So that's where that beat came with, starting with and just shuffling things around. Now we get back to the percussion. And let's do, I got four of these for you. And these are in the Cowbell Grooves. We'll do the counting after the fact. But taking one of those iron rhythms, the offbeats. I'm going to go kind of quickly here. I'm burning up time. I don't want to make this a 40-minute video. I just took that, because you could go. But just to break things up, pretty straightforward. One more, which is kind of cool, and this one really caught. Hi, Keith. You can tell there's one person who asked a lot of these questions. There were a couple of others, but Keith was the primary one. I was playing, well, let me cut right to the groove. 1, 2. I said, what are you doing in the cowbell? So this is something, I got it from Al O'Connor, NIU. And I doubt that Al was the one who came up with it. I'm sure he picked this up from someone else in his years of playing and exploration. Although Al was a very musical, smart, and creative guy, so maybe he did, but I suspect this comes from someone else. It comes from, cowbell, we drummers, we take the clapper out from the inside, but, you go to the Farm and Fleet and you'll have the cowbell inside. You go to a hockey game and you're shaking the cowbell, there's the clapper inside. This is just a refined version of that. So instead of just a random, where if it's 1, E, and you're hitting the lower surface of the bell and the upper surface, just even 16ths. But to really add that extra element, what Al was doing is on the downbeats, drop his wrist a little bit, catch the edge of the bell, so you get that low note. And when I saw him do this, he wasn't playing drum set. He was a marvelous drum set player. No one knows that about Al. I'm putting it out there, Al. But He was just playing. We were rehearsal. Cliff was new. This was Birch Creek in Wisconsin in 1983, 84, and we were just rehearsing our pan parts, and he just needed to give us a sense of where the tempo was, and I saw that and say, I'm filing that away. So it's a little tricky for me to do on the drum set. Not once I get there, because this is another topic for another video. A lot of times if we have difficulty playing something, it's not playing the thing, it's getting into it. That's true on marimba, it's true on drums. Another video. So the challenge is also, if I want to get this to the butt end of the stick, you could use the tip of the stick, it'll be fine. But getting to the point where the stick is inside the bell can be a little bit challenging logistically. It takes a little practice. It's not horribly difficult, but to get it smooth, it can be a little tricky. But once you get it in there, it's the same idea. Down, up, mouth, inside, mouth, inside. Really cool effect. And again, for a nice break, just getting away from, it's just a nice variation. So that's one based on the iron pattern. Here's another one where, and you may say rickety. No, I haven't done this one yet because I did 2 takes and my camera ran out of battery. So another one based on that iron pattern. I did this one already. You're going to see a real nasty edit in here. I'm going to do it in case I didn't. Taking. So that's where that one came from. Coming from the iron groove, I'm doing a short version because I'm pretty sure I did this already. Kids, when you do these videos, pro tip, not like I'm a pro, storyboard this stuff, have some notes. So if you see a rickety edit in this thing, that's where it comes from. Last video, I'm doing this way too much, is going to be based off of and this comes from a couple of variations. One was I heard Marvin Smitty Smith play this on a Monty Alexander album, Ivory and Steel, that has Len Boogsy Sharp and Natalia Molyneux. Recommend it highly. Boy, I hope it's still in print. If not, find it. And on the song Sly Mongoose, he does that, takes that rhythm. And I'm hesitant to try to play that up to tempo because my right foot has never let me lock that in. But I'll try it. Work in progress. Please be gentle in the comments section. So that's where I got the idea from of taking and breaking it up on the surface of the drum set, getting the bass drum, getting the little high and low drum sounds. So my first step on this was I thought, well, let me take which is okay, but what else can I do with that? But I noticed pattern I played before when I was demonstrating a mambo. And sometimes I'll add that downbeat when I do this groove and give me that sort of a beat. My Dave DiCenzo half clave beat. But just taking. Well, what else can I do with that? Each step, raw material for the next. And I decided to put this on the bell. I think this is 10 years ago I came up with this stuff, so I may be misremembering it. Don't be surprised. But let's go back to the, because that's what I played in the aforementioned video. Getting back to the elements of. Sounds good, needed a little bit more. So I thought on the downbeats, I don't need to close and hit with the stick. It's a little redundant. Put a bell up here. Sounds good, but then I was just playing around with it, and I started to keep the first two notes on the cowbell, again thinking. And then that single, the third note of the bell pattern, put it on the snare drum. And then you can take that snare drum note, next step in the variation, move it around, and what I think I ended up with, if I remember correctly on the video, it's a nice little call and response sort of a thing. I'll do the first one on the snare drum, second one on the floor tom. I just like the feel of it going back and forth. So, for those few of you who asked about those grooves, I hope this has illuminated what I did. I would be shocked if other drummers haven't come up with some of these things already. I'm not running to the patent office or the copyright office with this stuff. I don't think you can copyright a drum beat anyway. But otherwise, Earl Palmer would have an estate worth trillions. But I digress. So, any questions about what I played here? You can do this with any style. Dig a little deeper and just find out, you hear these rhythms, find out where they come from. I'll throw one more in. If you don't see a rickety edit here, if you see a rickety edit, you'll know this didn't make it in there. I was listening to, I was on a Robert Greenidge kick last night on YouTube, checking out steel band stuff, solo stuff, and went back to listen to his so tasteful solo on Grover Washington Jr.'s Just the Two of Us. If you haven't heard that, it's going back a few years now, but absolutely brilliant. And it's such a great album, the Wine Light album, and Grover Washington Jr. with Steve Gadd and Eric Gale and Richard T. and Marcus Miller and Ralph McDonald on percussion, who I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize until years later from Trinidad. And something he played on that, now I understand where it comes from. The beginning of the steel pan solo. And I don't remember the exact drum beat. The drum beat is pretty straight. It's like... something along those lines. I should have made a note of exactly what Gadd was playing. It's a very straightforward beat. And you hear Ralph playing on, it sounds like claves. Off beats all the way through the steel pan solo. So you dig a little deeper, you find out what these instruments are, what these instruments that you're hearing, the rhythms that you're hearing. And a lot of these rhythms, that right there, you'll hear a strumming pattern on the steel pans in the mid-range, providing the chordal background in an arrangement. Dig deep, check out these rhythms. Don't be afraid to take something that you hear in the guitar or something that you hear in any other instrument or something in the arrangement. We play a bossa nova. I'm going off on a tangent here, but that's all right. The disk space is cheap. All these things, when we're playing a bossa nova going... Check out some of the great Brazilian guitarists playing in this style. Romero Lubambo, Oscar Castro Neves. Get João Gilberto live at Montreux. It's just him on stage with a guitar. This little guy looks like Bob Newhart. Has the audience in the palm of his hand. Just amazing. But listen to the comping he does. And you can take that from the guitar rhythm, put it on the snare drum. It's not unique to one instrument. A lot of these rhythms, they're just idiomatic rhythms, and they show up on the guitar, they show up on the drums, they show up in percussion, they show up in the keyboard. Draw from these things, and this is where you can come up with your own variations. So I'm going to stop because I'm doing this way too much and wrap things up. Thank you again for checking this out. Thank you to the people who responded and inquired about this. If you have any questions, either unanswered from the original grooves, or if my ramblings of the past 20 minutes or so require clarification, the comments section will be open. Thanks again for your time and interest. Have a good day.